Casus Belli. Casus Belli. Casus Belli. Casus Belli.
Well, it's time again. It's Death Diary 93. We're going to be talking about Casus Belli, as well as war, peace, and of course, claims. Now, 2 weeks ago, we talked about the change in the way the border system actually worked within the context of the game. There's going to be a complete overhaul in the way that systems are being claimed by adding star bases, or at least a star base cap you can have, and basically that allows you to control certain areas. Obviously, the zero level star bases are all free, and then basically you tier them up from there on, all the way up to level 4 or level 5 or something along those lines. Once we get the hands on the build, we'll be able to take a better look at how this is all going to progress. However, let's take a look at the war goal overhaul. So in the past, you could basically, or at least as of 1.8, you can go to war with anybody for any reason whatsoever, take whatever you want. So basically, for instance, if I am going to war with a random empire somewhere and I'm just like, I want that particular planet that's in the middle of your empire just to spite you, that is currently possible. Basically, there's zero restriction to war as of right now in 1.8. Cherryh is going to completely change all of that. The entire war goal system is going to be overhauled by adding something new called claims. Now, claims are already part of the 91 Death Diary that we talked about 2 weeks ago, and that means that there is going to be a new system in place that basically defines of I've got a claim on this particular system, therefore I can have a war for these systems or these particular war goals. Now, this is all set up by basically looking at another empire and be like, this system over here, I would like to put a claim on it and spend a bunch of influence in order to get a better claim. Now, you can do that in tiers. It is all influence. Now, in these images that we're going to put up, obviously final numbers are definitely not final whatsoever, and it's apparently very work in progress. So it's all these green arrows you're seeing and stuff like that. There's a bunch of iconography here that are all very much work in progress. So please bear with the devs as we go along. So basically, yeah, we're going to be viewing a system where you'll be able to spend influence on claims on neighboring systems and then go to war for those systems. But it's not as straightforward as it is. So the entire system regarding, and I quickly need to take a look here what it is actually called, because I'm sometimes a little bit of a numpty. Yeah, the entire war score system is going to be removed completely. No longer will you be forced to use a system where war goals are in place and you have to tick up your war score in order to basically trigger your goals. Instead, there is going to be something called war exhaustion and an expanded peace negotiation system. So as of the current build of the game, in the deaf variant that is that you'll be able to have 3 outcomes of a goal of a war. For instance, let's say that you have a claim on a system, and in this particular scenario, let's say that there is a starbase in that system. You push your borders, you go into that system, you claim it, you control it, and let's say that the other party is doing a very similar thing. They push into your space, they claim and control it. You will need to take down the starbase in that actual system, down to 0, and then you can control it. And then from there on, you can use that starbase, if the resources are available, to repair all your ships. You'll be able to control the mining bases in that system, etc., while that is still on the enemy side. However, this basically means that the peace offer system starts to come into effect. Let's say, like I said in the example from just now, that multiple systems from the enemy have been taken, but the enemy has also taken some of yours. There's a chance that you'll be able to do something called a settle status quo. What that means is that everything that's conquered right now by either side will flip to either side. Means that there will be gains and losses on both sides. This also means that when you're in a war situation, you will need to bust back and forth trying to take systems and doing quote-unquote, as it says in the Death Diary, raids in order to get all these things under control and basically flipping the resources in that system to your side. Because as the work progresses, you flip these stations, you get control, you get resources, which allows you to build more stuff. So that is kind of that thing, and the status quo system kind of comes into effect there as well. To quickly go back on towards the whole Casus Belli thing, depending on what kind of claim you have multiple war goals. You can go for conquering, you can go vassalization, tributary. There's a very interesting one called imposing ideology and humiliate, which is already in the game. But imposing ideology is very interesting, which could be a very interesting setup towards long-term vassalization, because any nation that has the same ideology as you do is more inclined to be your friend. Obviously, there is the was at war malice in place there, but in the end, you should be able to turn them into your subjects if you are more than powerful enough to take it. So this is all this stuff is looking very, very good. Some empires, such as fanatical purifiers, devouring swarms, and determined exterminators, have special casus belli, usually allowed for them to conquer their neighbors at will. Exceptions being empires they do not hate. So the whole attacking other empires at will is still a thing, but only for the aforementioned purifiers, swarms, and exterminators. So they can ignore claims altogether, but they will be seen as a threat by everybody, and there will most likely be counterclaims there as well, which is very interesting. Just to loop back onto the whole war exhaustion thing. War exhaustion goes from 0 to 100% and measures the total weariness and attrition suffered by all empires in one side of a war. This can apply to psychological and logistical. Now, the logistics is really a thing in the game as of right now. Maybe we'll see that at some time in the future, but nothing in Cherryh kind of hints at that, which is interesting. When a war exhaustion hits 100%, it can be forced into a status quo peace, as mentioned before. Of course, if you've got all your war goals, you can obviously, achieve war goals. So there's that, of course, as well. Surrendering means that the victor's war goal will be enforced. Victory, obviously, means that your war goal will be enforced. And status quo, we already discussed a little bit. Status quo not being a white piece, as it is in the game right now, but whatever the either side has taken will be flipped to either side, which kind of will make the game a lot more interesting in terms of long-term objectives. Let's say that you're completely grounded down into a war that lasts 50, 60 years, and your attrition and war wariness is just completely maxed out. You'll be able to basically flip sides and get at least a little bit of the goals that you had in mind. System occupation, Starbase needs to be taken down to 0. We already talked about this stuff, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, basically you're going to get punished if you do not do a good enough job to defend those stations, whether or not you've captured them before or they were initially yours to begin with. So all of this stuff is very applicable. So we're going to see apparently a lot more raiding, which most likely means that we're going to see a lot more smaller fleet engagements there. I was looking at one of the video dev diaries from the other week, and it looks like the fleets are now also going to be capped, as in the amount of fleet power that can be available in one fleet, most likely based on the admiral strength and on a bunch of technologies. So they're currently already working on getting around the whole Doomstack issue. So having multiple fleets flying around is going to be a thing in the Cherryh update, which is very interesting. Other thoughts? Apparently they're currently very heavily testing and tweaking the new systems, and like I said at the start of the dev diary, all numbers are not final. Currently they're also trying out how the following systems work: the ability to claim an unsettled system and to put a quote-unquote dibs on a system without going to build an outpost there. Having claims to be cheaper if you do not have a ton of them, which makes sense because smaller scale conflicts is interesting at the start of the game. Potentially allowing claims to be made by attacker rather than just defender during a war, but have them be more expensive, which is kind of cool actually. Basically, if you have a claim somewhere, you can push those claims into the actual war, but it scales. Kind of similar to if you want to retrieve resources from a sector. If you are in a defensive war, it is a lot cheaper to get those resources out. Instead of 100 influence, it costs 25. So the scaling there could be quite interesting. Ways to slow and reduce war exhaustion at the expense of your economy and the population. So maybe something like war rations or something like that within species rights, etc., etc., or living standards, which could be really cool as well. that will wrap things up for Def Diary 93. I hope that you enjoyed this. Casus Belli are coming to Stellaris, a fascinating little thing here. Next week, we're going to be talking about space battles, command limits, and doom stacks, something that I already alluded to in the Def Diary before, and we've already seen some images floating around the interwebs where command limits are in fleets. So we will see whether or not that's going to be the case. Let's hope that it's going to completely remove doom stacks as they are. We're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take good care of yourselves, and as always, eat Shutter.